Moving on now to spectators. And one of the features of the Olympics is, of course, the people watching. Now, there will be billions of people watching through media, social media, on television, but there also will be hundreds of thousands who will go to the games to participate. Millions of tickets will be sold and billions of people will see the event. But I want to talk a little bit about attending the Olympics, because it's more than simply watching a sporting event. There is a certain energy or electricity, a spirit to a city hosting the event. And even being in the city while the Olympics is held is a very positive experience. Having been to Vancouver 2010 and London 2012, there is something about the cities that are hosting that is very captivating, very appealing for the visitor. But being a spectator, the Olympics demands a lot. First, you actually have to get your tickets, which is sometimes a year-long process of entering in lotteries in order to possibly receive the tickets you would like. You then have to find a place to stay. And of course, given the demand for the Olympics, hotels, rooms, pensions all have very high prices and are often difficult to obtain. On top of that is the cost of travel, flying or transportation to the event itself, and then dealing with the security and the logistics of moving around. Because while athletes and IOC officials have expedited transportation around an Olympic venue and site, the public has to rely upon the transportation systems provided by the host city and the Olympics. Usually these are well coordinated and organized, but they can also be very time-consuming as tens of thousands of people move from venue to venue. One advantage of the Sochi venue setup is that all of the main venues together in the coastal cluster make it very convenient for spectators to move from one event to the other. But let's talk a little bit about the future role of spectators, because while I find attending and watching the Olympics to be very positive and satisfying, I also at times got a sense of being an extra in a much bigger production, that I was there to provide audience and to applaud, to recognize athletic success, but I was really an extra in a much bigger production of global media presenting the Olympics to the world. The number of actual spectators versus the number of people watching through, say, television is quite small. Yet those spectators do in fact play an important role cheering on athletes and reflecting on what it's like to be a participant in the Olympics. So when we get to the Sochi Games, we can ask ourselves, how many people will actually come? Sochi is estimated to have more than 1 million tickets, but only 70% have been claimed. So there are still many tickets available. Many of the tickets that are made available at the Olympics are made available to sponsors. Sponsors give them to their clients, but they may not use them. So it's not surprising to have sold-out Olympic events, yet the audience seems somewhat sparse. This occurred in London, when there were often blank spaces in an arena or stadium, and often people were given access to those seats in order to make the stadium look full. It was not uncommon to see the British military, who were providing security, in their off hours being invited to watch events in order to provide a full stadium. One thing to look out for when you're looking at the Sochi Games is how full are the stands and who is actually sitting in the stands. Because often it's very difficult for the public to get tickets once officials and sponsors have claimed their share of the Olympic tickets. The number of people that can actually get tickets and attend can therefore be quite a small number of the actual seats available. Sochi, therefore, is currently undersold as an Olympic event. Vancouver sold 97% of its tickets, but Sochi only 70% so far. So being a spectator is something I would recommend to you. It's an exciting, wonderful experience, and I would certainly do it again. But we have to recognize that there is a burden on our desire to see an Olympic event in terms of the effort involved in actually getting to the Games, obtaining tickets, and being able to enjoy the event.
So one of the reasons why spectators might be staying away from the Sochi Olympics has to do with security concerns. The concern about having to deal with increased security activity, but plus also the threat of a terrorist attack. This is sadly something that spectators and athletes will have to take seriously. In mid-January, for example, an Islamic militant group released a video on YouTube claiming responsibility for the 2 deadly suicide bombings in Volgograd in December 2013, which killed 34 people and injured more than 100. The video threatened further attacks during the Sochi Olympics. The U.S. Olympic Committee has warned athletes against wearing conspicuous Team USA gear outside the secure Olympic compound because it, quote, may put your personal safety at greater risk, unquote. So in response to these security threats, the Olympic organizers have really stepped up the security operations around the Olympics. They have tried to construct a 1,500 square mile ring of steel around Sochi, around the Olympic venues. They are bringing in extra troops and try to monitor who's coming in and out, use extensive use of CCTV cameras. They are also monitoring all phone calls, emails, and social media messages that are going in and out of Sochi. Another thing that might be keeping spectators away is a protest over the anti-gay legislation that was passed last year in Russia. These laws have sparked protests in Russia and in overseas. The Sochi mayor, however, declared that there are no gay people here. Having the Olympics in Sochi has done is focused attention on the plight of gays and lesbians in Russia. Many international figures, such as President Obama, are boycotting the games, but no athletes are. And in fact, the official U.S. delegation is being led by openly gay athletes. Many activist groups have said that they think it is a good idea for the athletes to go because they can make a statement by their very presence. The IOC has pledged to work to ensure that the Games will take place without discrimination against athletes, officials, spectators, and the media. And in response, the game organizers have created a separate protest zone 18 kilometers outside of Sochi to contain any protest activity. So, sadly, it is something that we should be watching as the games unfold, whether any terrorist events occur, hopefully not, and whether any protest activity emerges, and if so, what form it takes. One form in which protests have already taken place is through social media. McDonald's organized a Twitter campaign called Cheers to Sochi, and it was launched to allow fans to send personalized messages of support to athletes and to let the athletes view and print those messages onto ribbons which they could wear around their wrists. But the campaign has attracted many messages protesting the treatment of homosexuals in Russia and criticizing McDonald's for its involvement in the Sochi Games, because that involvement is seen as endorsing Russian anti-gay policy. Now, McDonald's has chosen to not pull the plug on their social media campaign, to let people speak freely. So this is a form of protest that is sort of coming in under the radar of the Sochi organizers. Spectators will also be present virtually through social media, not just in the stands. Athletes are very active, many of them on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and blogs. And in fact, in response to that, the IOC has guidelines for the athletes' use of social media, blogging, and the internet. There was a bit of a flap last year when the Sochi organizers said that journalists and spectators would not be allowed to use social media while they were at the Olympics. But there was such an outcry that they changed their decision, and journalists and spectators are allowed to participate using social media.
To conclude then, this module has looked at the events the spectators and athletes and how they experience the Olympics. So be sure to go online, join our discussion groups, tell us what you think, explain how you enjoyed the Olympics as a spectator, hopefully as an athlete, and as someone who appreciates the Olympics for their display of athletic success.